For educational critical review and reaction is Jordan Maxwell. The Reptilians are coming, but I won't be here.
Read with Adam and Eve, and you'll see the serpent conversing with Eve. Alien interaction and interplay between aliens and humans. One Hebrew Jewish source on the Bible says, for Adam and Eve human. We're all familiar with the Old Testament account of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and how they ate the forbidden fruit. But what is not widely known is that there were other ancient religious documents that describe this event and tell us of a different and startling story. And the Jewish writings, wellspring of Jewish oral tradition that says the first result was that Adam and Eve became naked before their bodies had been overlaid with a horny skin and enveloped in a cloud of glory. And then it goes on to say, no sooner have they violated the command given them, then the cloud of glory, then their horny skin dropped from them. And it talks about the second quote was from another source. This is a Christian Gnostic text. Talks about how now Eve believed the words of the serpent. She looked at the tree and she took some time. She took some of its fruit and ate, and she gave her husband also, and he ate too. Then their mind opened, and they ate, and the light of knowledge shone for them. They knew that they were naked in regard to knowledge. And when they saw their makers, they loathed them. Since they were beastly forms, they understood very much. So even in the old Gnostic Christian text talking about the makers of mankind were beastly in form. And if that's the case, then we were made the image and likeness. And so when we were made, the Jewish writings say we had horny skins. And so the ancient world always showed kings and rulers and princes connected to serpents, serpent queens. Some of the scientific books are theorizing that the dinosaurs somehow or another were able to evolve into other kind of creatures over millions of years. And of course, there's Nicholas de Very. He was a Grand Master of the Dragon's Legacy, or the Dragon's Court in Europe. Sir, what was his name? What was the name of that writer that died that did all the work on the bloodlines? Do you remember? Who was that? A thin writer, I can't remember his name right now. Sir Lawrence Gardner. Lawrence Gardner. So Lawrence Gardner wrote quite a few books, large books about the bloodlines of the Holy Grail, about Jesus, bloodlines, etc. Very famous author, and I know him well. We did some lectures together. Well, I found out later that Nicholas de Very was a co-author in Europe with Sir Lawrence Gardner. But Lawrence Gardner didn't tell Americans that most of the knowledge that Lawrence Gardner was bringing out in his books that we were reading here about the bloodlines of the royalty of Europe and the royalty of the bloodlines of Jesus and all that kind of thing. He was getting a lot of his information from Nicholas de Very, who was a Grand Master in the Dragon's Court in Europe, a secret society, a very powerful ancient old order where they worshiped the dragon, the reptile alien gods. And this was a very legitimate society. And this is what was his name? And they called him Vlad the Impaler. Who was this? What was the term they gave him? Dracula. Dracula was actually a real man. He was a prince, and he was very bloodthirsty. And, but he belonged to, and at the time, Dracula was the head of the Dragon's Court. Today, Nicholas de Very is the head of the Dragon's Court. And so Nicholas talks about, his book is called The Dragon's Legacy, The Secret History of the Ancient Bloodlines. And on the bottom it says he's a Grand Master, Imperial Royal Dragon's Court. And so, as I said, he writes a lot about the concept of the reptile aliens who have ruled Europe behind the scenes. Lord of the Rings makes the reptile eyes. That's pretty extraordinary stuff when you think about the possibility that maybe there have been for thousands of years before humans were on the earth, this may have been inhabited by a reptilian race. The human brain, between the two lobes of the human brain, down the middle, there's something called the reptilian brain. I talked to doctors about this, and they said, yeah, that's the correct term that's used. There's a part of the human brain between the two lobes in the middle called the reptilian brain. And they say that when the human is developing in the womb, that it develops like a reptile. It's a tail, it has all the accoutrements of a reptile, lizard, or whatever, and then it begins to fill out and become more human. But when it's actually in the formative stages, it looks like a reptile. And of course, we have a reptile complex in the brain called the reptilian complex in the brain. So, you've got to wonder, why would science and medical science call this area in the brain the reptilian? Also in comic magazines, obviously, all kinds of comics over the years have always shown reptiles actually at war, wearing uniforms. So they're not just animals, they are actually intelligent creatures. Aztecs and Mayas, strange crescent heads. Steven Spielberg to make a television series called Taken, in which that was one of his most important subjects in his life, is this concept of aliens taking people, not just reptile aliens, but the whole concept of other world entities coming and kidnapping humans. So it was called Taken. Well, the movie Taken was actually comes from a book by Dr. Carla Turner, a lady doctor, who was probably the best UFO researcher in the world. As far as I'm concerned, she was top of everybody. All the best UFO researchers, but Dr. Carla Turner was, in my opinion, she was a doctor, some kind of a doctor before, but she got into the alien abduction subject, and her work was just phenomenal. She did some serious work on this whole subject of alien abduction. And she began to get into the connections between the U.S. government and alien presence, and how the U.S. government is working directly with the aliens. Soon after that, she was found dead, and her husband died later. Immediately after that came out, she started talking publicly about the fact that the U.S. government is dealing directly with aliens and allowing these aliens to kidnap children, to kidnap people, kidnap humans, and are using them for experiments. She was found dead. The question has to be asked, is it possible that there has been some kind of interfacing of humans with extraterrestrials and reptile aliens? I think so. I think that's what's happening, and I think they're here now. So you've got to explain them somehow. Either they're interdimensional beings, or they're coming from somewhere else, or they've always been here. Maybe we're the new guys on the block, and they've always been here. And we've heard all these stories about underground installations and underground military operations with reptile aliens. I've heard all kinds of stories from military people about that. So I would not be a bit surprised if we are being visited by other entities from other places in the universe, and we have been for a long time.